Have you ever looked at a rubber band ball and thought, I really want to buy that, but I don't have a use for it? I mean, a person only has so many things that need to be held together by a rubber band. What are you going to do with hundreds of them? Well, if you were anyone who was anyone in 2010, you bought those rubber bands anyway, except you bought them in colorful, overpriced packs of 12 and slowly amassed your own rubber band ball at home that you called your Silly Bandz collection. Silly Bandz first officially came about in 2009 after Robert Krook, distributor of the infamous Livestrong bands, saw someone else make them first. In 2002, a couple of Japanese designers molded rubber bands into animal shapes to discourage people from throwing them away so frequently and increase sustainability, calling them animal rubber bands. Robert saw this idea on a business trip, decided the bands were pretty poorly made and didn't really resemble animals very closely, and then made his own version years later. This new idea, though, wasn't about the sustainability of office supplies, but dealt in children's fashion. Silly Bandz were made of silicone instead of rubber, used generally sharper designs, and were marketed as a wearable accessory. No matter how you wore them, stretched them, or shaped them, Silly Bandz would always snap back to their original shape. It didn't take long for Silly Bandz to take off, gaining popularity by 2010 for their cute designs as statement pieces. There were Silly Bandz for everything, from baseball to Arctic animals, princesses to rock and roll, Christmas to the original animal rubber bands designs that Robert Krook criticized? No, that must just be my imagination. The bracelets became so popular that officially licensed Silly Bandz were eventually made of popular franchises, including such 2010 classics as Angry Birds, iCarly, and Farmville. Even a couple of celebrities joined in, with the Kardashians and Justin Bieber collaborating to create their own exclusive packs. The most popular packs, according to a good guess by Robert, were the Princess, Rock, and Hello Kitty packs. The brand had such success that more accessories like rings, necklaces, and even stickers were put out into the world. What's your favorite Silly Band? Oh, my favorite is shaped like a crab, but I don't like the bracelet. I only like the sticker of the bracelet. Rip-off brands like Logo Bands, Zany Bands, and Googly Bands were popping up everywhere to try and cash in on the sudden success. Given that they were marketed towards kids, it's no wonder that tons of children with their collective millions of Silly Bandz just couldn't get enough. Plenty of middle and elementary schools were filled with kids trying to shove their boring baseball Silly Bandz off onto some unsuspecting kid, trading for something way cooler and rarer. Now, I don't remember the Silly Band craze overly well, but I do remember that it just sort of appeared out of nowhere, and given that packs were relatively cheap compared to other toys and trends, pretty much every kid had them. They infiltrated my school so quickly that it was hard to keep up with the Silly Bandz trading market. When I think about it though, I don't think there actually was any agreed upon value for certain Silly Bandz over others. Glow-in-the-dark and glittery bands were popular, but were they actually harder to find? Did I trade half of my collection for the super rare man rocking out on guitar Silly Band that I also could have just bought at the local Walgreens for $4? Though kids making stuff up and cheating someone else out of a valuable item has been around since kids' collectible toys were first introduced. Probably since some children in the Middle Ages were trading sticks and little Emmeline told Beatrice that her stick was worth way more than those other flimsy twigs. Trading became so popular that at a lot of schools, Silly Bandz were eventually Silly Banned for their controversy, causing arguments over trading deals, collections getting mixed up or lost, and just generally being a classroom distraction. I remember the day that announcement was made at my own school and feeling pretty disappointed that my dozens of Silly Bandz, this new trendy item that was pretty much only good for showing off to other people, now wasn't even allowed in the main place I frequented as an 11-year-old. If you couldn't bring your Silly Bandz to school, though, how could you get your fix? By playing with the next best thing. Your virtual Silly Bandz in the coveted video game titled simply Silly Bandz for the Nintendo DS. Released in 2011, Silly Bandz the video game was published by Zoo Games, now named Indie Pub, who also published renowned classics such as Chicken Blaster and Eminem's Beach Party. The game functioned as an Angry Birds clone, except everything about it was worse. I guess it didn't set up players to expect much when its tagline was just, "Play the craze." A pack of exclusive video game themed Silly Bandz was included with the game, which was probably its main selling point. Another game titled Silly Bandz the Game was also released for mobile devices and played a lot like those mobile games you see in all the weird ads everywhere now. The ad for the game claimed that you would join Stella the puppy in a Silly Bandz themed adventure, though I don't see anything to do with her in the gameplay it shows, so that's kind of a letdown. Despite producing such quality games, it doesn't seem like anything could stop the fall of Silly Bandz. Just as quickly as they had been bought out of stock from every retailer that carried them, the fast fashion trend of Silly Bandz developed into nothing more than an early 2010s memory. I remember finding my own collection after years of them not being touched, all tangled together in a big colorful mess, and donating them to a local garage sale or something. I hate to think it, but I was probably among the few people that even bothered donating. Despite the intention of the original design of the Japanese animal rubber bands, I have a feeling once they weren't in style anymore, most people likely just tossed their Silly Bandz in the trash when discovering their hoard of them years later like I did. So much for encouraged sustainability. It's not like Silly Bandz is to blame for its fall into obscurity though, right? Such is the life cycle of any trend. They come, they go, they die. Or so we thought? In the past few years, Silly Bandz have been the topic of some nostalgia bait, with people making posts reminiscing the 2010s and asking, does anyone remember Silly Bandz? Which, of course, unless you were living under a rock, you probably do. Nostalgia bait isn't anything new. It plays to people's nostalgia for likes and views, making memes or other content revolving around sentimental things from days gone by. According to the About section on the official Silly Bandz website, and an article posted to the blog section of the same site, Silly Bandz are officially gaining popularity again. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that social media has brought old trends back into style. But what if most of the people talking about Silly Bandz aren't actually reminiscing, but trying to restart the brand themselves? The earliest TikTok on the official Silly Bandz business account, Silly Bandz Online, was made back in November 2019. I don't really get it, but harmless content, right? Since this first TikTok, the Silly Bandz Online account has posted over 1,000 videos, all about Silly Bandz. And it's not just nostalgia bait that's being posted, but pretty much any kind of video to be made that can somehow incorporate the bracelets. Among obvious promotional videos and giveaways, there's also ASMR.
Birthday cake. A magical wand.
Cooking recipes. Send this to your crush memes. Dog videos. Oddly satisfying videos. The list goes on. There are some real standouts among their hundreds of videos, though. There's a Silly series, which follows two of the self-proclaimed Silly Bandz girls as they go to different public stores and try to trade Silly Bandz for something free.
You guys trade Silly Bandz for freezes?
What?
Will you trade me a freeze for Silly Bandz? You will? Perfect. These are the Kim Kardashian ones. Like, hold on to these. Alright, have a good one. Yeah, baby! Free freezes! Let's go. And he gave us another one for free, so. Cheers.
Yeah, this series is Silly Girls, but I think you mean it in a different way than I do. In most of the videos, as you might expect, the already poorly paid workers that have to put up with this aren't really interested in dealing with the Silly Bandz girls, especially when they notice that they're filming. Some of the employees just give in, seemingly to get these people out of their line, or because, as this Silly Bandz boy puts it, she was too scared to tell me no. In some of the other videos, and I hate that they did so many of these, it seems like they probably told the workers what they were doing in advance and staged the video for better content. The worst part of this Silly series is that the creators actually challenged other TikTok users to do it themselves, calling it a challenge to harass minimum wage workers and beg for free stuff. Apparently, if you participated in the challenge, you could win cash prizes, Annie Energy, an energy drink partner with the company, or rare Silly Bandz. Totally worth ruining some poor fast food worker's day. Fortunately, when searching under their Silly series hashtag, the only videos of people doing the challenge were from the Silly Bandz account themselves, with just one video that was apparently done by a fan that's also clearly staged. Although I think the Silly series might be some of the cringiest videos on the account, there are definitely some runners-up. Take this video where a grown man narrates a Pikachu doll for some kind of Silly Bandz content.
Pika, what's wrong?
Pika, 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 Pika!
You don't have any Silly Bandz!
Pika? Pikachu!
These young girls being told to say that their hands are ugly until they wear Silly Bandz, which is just wrong for a lot of reasons. And multiple videos showing how easily broken Silly Bandz are, again, under the guise of being relatable. And again, this just makes me feel sad for the original Animal Rubber Bands creators who just wanted people to stop treating rubber bands as disposable. Instead, they ended up fueling corporate greed through a stolen idea that's easily breakable and designed to be a fad that ends up getting thrown in the trash. There's even a few videos about how relatable it is to want to wear so many Silly Bandz that it cuts off the circulation to your hands, which, aside from not being relatable at all, is just blatantly glossing over the fact that there was a case where a 4-year-old was wearing so many Silly Bandz that they made his hand swell, cut into his skin, and caused him to bleed. I'm not saying that the Silly Bandz team is directly to blame for this, but considering that this kid was probably not the only case of this happening, I just find it kind of icky to turn this into relatable content. What's arguably even worse than the cutting off your circulation jokes, though, is this video posted in October of 2020.
There is a new virus going around, and I think I already have it. I have like all the symptoms. It's called SBS, Silly Bandz syndrome. It literally says pandemic, and there's no cure. I mean, I guess if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna look good while doing it.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Obviously the video is just cringy in general, but I'm sure I don't need to get into why it's gross to compare Silly Bandz syndrome to a virus that even this girl herself acknowledged as deadly. And I'm also sure that plenty of people made tons of jokes pretty similar to this, and if you really wanted to reach, you could even say that this is how some people coped with the stress of 2020. I just don't find it appropriate at all, though, for a brand to be posting this as a way to try to garner success and revive a product that already fell out of relevancy a decade ago. So, cringy TikToks aside, what else is Silly Bandz doing as a brand to try and fuel their own revival? Well, for starters, getting influencers to become affiliates so they can create even more TikToks for them. Once making a purchase, only then will you be prompted to be able to register as an affiliate. You won't get free Silly Bandz unless you already have at least 50k followers, if that's what you're after, but you can earn up to 14% through commission on each sale. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know anything about business deals and public relations, but isn't 14% kind of a weirdly specific number? Like, why 14? Also, 14% of the cost of a regular pack of Silly Bandz is only 55 cents, so do with that information what you will. In addition to searching for affiliates, Silly Bandz has already partnered with a group of influencers in yet another attempt to revive the brand. Sway House, a team of teenage boys that make quality TikTok content, quote, made a big investment in Silly Bandz, making it their first stake in a company acquired as an investing group. With an official stake in the brand, which for all my non-entrepreneurial types like myself, basically means that they own a percentage of the company, this seems like the perfect way to market towards a younger audience, especially fans of the Sway Boys. Oh, well, that's not good. For all my non-entrepreneurial types out there, I don't really know what this means for their partnership. What I do know, though, is that there hasn't been any talk about it since they invested, and as far as I can tell, Silly Bandz have not taken off again, despite what Robert and his Silly Bandz girls would have you believe. So maybe the Sway House deal didn't pan out how they expected it to, and maybe all of their TikToking isn't gaining them as many views as they thought it would either. There's still one surefire way to make money, promote the brand, and that everyone will love. Do like a charity partnership or something? No, stupid. Make a Silly Bandz NFT. In January of 2022, Robert Croak, infamous Silly Bandz creator, announced the launch of Silly Bandz NFTs, which feature a shape from the specified Silly Bandz collection, as well as an accessory and a custom background. With the purchase of an NFT, you'll also get benefits like free Silly Bandz, free shipping on Silly Bandz purchases, and eventually metaverse wearables functionality. Just what I always wanted! Their NFT website claims that every NFT was painstakingly thought out and designed by our in-house creative team with rarity and collectability in mind. Yeah, I can see the painstaking creativity in this Plankton from SpongeBob silhouette. As Silly Bandz grow in worldwide popularity and the exclusivity of this small collection reaches the masses, it will surely drive up the desirability and prices. There they go again, self-proclaiming their supposed growing popularity. I think Robert watched too many manifesting tutorials while he was busy on TikTok. From their FAQ, it seems like the price ranges from what is currently $87 to $100 worth of cryptocurrency. I don't know anything about NFTs except that they make me feel like I need to go wash my hands, so let me know if that seems like a good price for Plankton. Speaking of Robert being busy on TikTok, I feel like this is a good time to touch on his own personal TikTok account that's filled with classic entrepreneur posts giving financial advice, tips on how to become wealthy that don't include selling a viral phenomenon, and calling out Elon Musk directly for manipulating the market. Should we tell him that the app doesn't work and Elon isn't listening? I'm a long way from Silly Bandz TikTok. So, are Silly Bandz making a comeback? If you ask Robert and the Silly Bandz girls, of course they are, and you should buy ASAP. If you ask pretty much anyone else, no? I do scroll past the occasional non-sponsored, non-branded, nostalgic Silly Bandz post, but I also see those for things like that green ketchup they used to make, and I don't think that means that people want it back or that it'll be in stores again soon. Robert Croak seems to be just another money-hungry entrepreneur type that thinks they can relive their best invention, dates younger women, and is grumpy with Elon Musk. He really believes with enough forced promotion and harassment of fast food employees that Silly Bandz will make a comeback, despite the fact that he mostly just got lucky with the idea. But obviously I'm just a simple consumer, so don't take my word for it. If NFT Silly Bandz Plankton, I can't believe that's a coherent phrase, ends up taking off, then I guess I'll see you in the metaverse, or whatever.